Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MTV Spider-Man Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 9 of Spider-Man, the new animated series, Flash Memory. And as the title of the episode indicates, we're meeting this continuity's version of Flash Thompson. Put simply, he's an idiot. But the idiocy does play a part in the story. You see, Flash Thompson has actually signed up for what he thinks is a tutoring program because he wants to get better grades and, well, someone offered. Well, the thing is, the ad for the program didn't actually say tutoring, it just said he'd get better grades. In reality, he's signed up to be the test subject for a scientist by the name of Dr. Zellner, who I think is a Spidey baddie, but don't quote me on that. And Dr. Zellner has been creating a formula that is supposed to essentially enhance someone's intelligence. And so Flash is going to be a guinea pig for it. And sure enough, once Flash is injected with the serum, he gets smarter, more eloquent. He's still kind of a dick, but he's able to use his newly acquired intelligence to start picking up chicks and showing off around the campus, which is surprising to everybody, including Peter, Harry, and MJ, though MJ is on the receiving end of his advances, and because of his newly acquired intelligence, he's acting a bit more gentlemanly, so she's putting up with it. Although everyone does note the spot where he got injected, because it kind of looks like a hickey, and it does get bigger. However, as Flash continues showing off his newly acquired intelligence, he starts feeling a bit weaker, like he starts getting pains, and it is getting concerning. To add on to this, it turns out there's a kind of new threat in town. These two new biker twins who are essentially geniuses. The thing is, though, they weren't originally geniuses. After Spider-Man ends up apprehending them during one of their first heists, Peter meets up with Indy, and Indy reveals that the bikers, they were just stone cold morons. And that's the nice way of putting it. When they were in jail, they were so dumb they couldn't even tie their own shoelaces, and any IQ test they got wound up getting their results in the double digits. And as a result, Peter and Indy do wonder what exactly caused these two biker morons to go from so dumb they could barely walk straight to becoming geniuses. And sure enough, yeah, they're also test subjects for Dr. Zellner's experiments, and part of the reason why they're going out and robbing is because the money that they're getting for all the things they're stealing go to Dr. Zellner and to fund his research. Unfortunately, though, they're not faring any better than Flash. You see, the serum that boosts intelligence does kind of have a few side effects. Some fatal side effects. Essentially, and they don't outright say this, but based on the available evidence in the episode, it do kind of showcase it. Essentially, in order to boost intelligence, the serum seems to redirect nerve impulses from other parts of the body, such as muscle mass and movement, cardiovascular system, etc., into the brain. And unfortunately, the body can't take this, and as a result, eventually, the serum will cause a total system failure in whoever it's injected into. Or, to put it bluntly, they go dead. And unfortunately, that's what's happening to Flash and the two biker twins. Thankfully, Peter is able to connect the dots and figures out that whatever happened to Flash happened to the twins, because he knows the same mark that was on Flash is on them. And so after he continues further digging into Dr. Zellner's research, he does kind of put the two and two together. Though that last part only happened after the Flash ended up calling Peter. You see, Dr. Zellner thinks that if he could just find the point where they were breaking down, he could create an anti-serum. And Flash thinks that and the thing is, he's been using the same baseline for each of his test subjects. Big in muscles, small in brain. And so he thinks that if he actually had someone who was more intelligent, they'd be able to measure out response times or when there'd be a breakdown, and he'd be able to figure out what went wrong in the serum and be able to fix it. As such, Flash wound up calling Peter because Peter's the smartest guy he knows. And after Peter gets the call, he does call Indy, and that's when he puts two and two together. As such, he goes to Dr. Zellner's lab dressed as Spider-Man with the cover excuse that Peter that he intercepted Peter and took his place. But unfortunately, Spidey ends up getting double teamed by the two biker muscleheads, who are at this point getting very desperate to find an anti-serum, because even they know that they're getting worse too, and eventually they're not even going to be able to move on their own. As such, they end up managing to overpower. As such, after they overpower him, they strap him into a table and wind up giving him an animal tranquilizer, since the battle wound up pumping his system full of adrenaline. But Spidey, even in his doped up state, does manage to convince Flash to help him out, and so Flash ends up getting him out of his chair. And while Spidey is still groggy, he still has his spider powers. And unfortunately, the two biker guides are starting to feel the side effects too. So they're not really much better in terms of fighting than Spidey is. So it's a kind of an even match, and Spidey wins the battle. Unfortunately, Dr. Zellner realizes that he's screwed, so he takes a gun to Flash and says, tell Spidey, don't follow us, or I will shoot this kid. Thankfully, Spider-Man has enough sense to web a recording device to Flash so he can still track them. And thankfully, Indy, after she and Peter talked, did have enough sense to go to the lab. So she meets up with Spider-Man and she gives him a lift. As such, Spider-Man's able to use a laptop in the news van that she had to hack into the recording device on Flash, and thankfully Flash has already thought up a means to counteract the serum, which is essentially, he says replace the GABA with the beta. I don't remember. I think that was what it was. I might be skewering it, but bottom line, he knows how to reverse it. Unfortunately, Dr. Zellner can't go back to his lab because he knows Spider-Man will be there, so he just thinks that Flash is going to die soon. Thankfully, after getting some coffee in his systems and with Indy's help and with the promise of an exclusive, he ends up intercepting the subway that Flash and Zellner are on, and after a bit of a tussle combined with more animal tranquilizer, and Spidey ends up managing to overpower Zellner and knock him out. As such, with Flash in tow, he does get back to the lab, and with the recording device, he did overhear what Flash said, and Peter is able to create an counter serum that thankfully does reverse the effects of the brain enhancing serum. Unfortunately, Flash is still a jackass. So even when Peter says, "Hey, I just saved your life. A thank you, be appreciated," Flash tells him, "No, you didn't. Spider-Man did. You're just a wimp. Blah blah blah." And by the end of the episode, it's clear that Flash has learned nothing. So there you go. But otherwise, what did I think of the episode? It's fine. Nothing great, but definitely fine. It does. I think if I want to get into ongoing plot threads that this episode goes through, I think one that they definitely touch on is Peter's relationship with Indy. In this episode, they do start asking questions about where their relationship really is going, and it gets to the point where even that Peter and Indy begin asking what's going on. Like, it's clear that Indy is into Peter. Like, we know that from her very first episode, especially since that episode ended with her kissing Peter. But they're both kind of at odds, wondering where their relationship is going. Like, is it going to be something big, or is it going to be something romantic, or is it just casual? And it's something that they talk about. There's actually kind of one scene that's somewhat amusing, somewhat annoying. It's the scene where Indy calls Peter to the news station and actually tells him about what happened with the two biker twins, how they were idiots, and how they somehow became super geniuses. And while Indy's having one conversation, Peter's trying to ask her about what to do, about where their relationship is going, who they are to each other, etc. Sorry, I have an IV sore right here. So as a result of this, and so it does kind of look like the things are getting annoying. It's a little annoying because it looks like Peter isn't paying attention and he's trying to figure out exactly where they're going in their relationship. But what turns it around into amusing is that Indy says, "Look, I know what you're doing, but I have a career going, and you have a career, and I have to know you're focused." And then it turns out Peter was listening as he summarizes exactly what she says, and even says, "Well, what caused the transformation in the first place?" It's like, that's admittedly a cute scene, and what's even funnier is the scene that led up to it, Indy calling Peter and telling him, I have some juicy information that I'd like to share with you, but she said it in the most seductive and sexy way possible, and it gets Peter flustered enough to almost drop the phone and almost slide off of a building. It's actually just hilarious. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, doggo. Anyway, as I was saying, but yeah, another thing that helps excel their relationship and kind of puts it in a similar place to where Peter was with MJ. Indy starts getting to know Spidey. It's not just like, well, like I said, going back to when Spidey was chasing after Flash and Dr. Zellner, Indy ends up coming up and gives Spidey a ride, gives him a coffee, and does let him use her equipment in order to track down the bad guy. So she does end up becoming more of a help in the grand scheme of things than just being the token girlfriend and providing Peter with intel. So there is still more chemistry being built up there, and they do still click. Honestly, it's actually kind of interesting to see her develop as a potential romantic partner for Peter, especially since recent events in other episodes, Peter and MJ's relationship has once again been downgraded to just friends. So it's cool to see it where it goes from that. It's cool to see where their relationship is going and how it's progressing. So I think that's cool. I like that. If I have to think though. As for Dr. Zellner, I will openly admit he's a creepy villain. It mostly has to do with his voice actor. I forgot the voice actor's name, so I'm so sorry for that. But he does a really good job, kind of keeping his delivery kind of dry but sinister, dead but still carrying weight to it. It helps that he's also the guy who voiced Brainiac in Injustice 2, so good on him for that. I like that. So I do like seeing that and where it goes and how he does it. At the same time, they do kind of showcase him more as the cold schemer. Definitely, he's not there for some big grand plan. He's just there to accelerate his research, and he's willing to leave a few bodies in his wake if it helps push things forward. He's not he's not a big grand schemer. He's not a big take over the world type of villain. He's just a guy who wants to do his research and thinks that the scientific guidelines of human rights is just a suggestion. So I like that. So yeah, not a bad villain, not great, but decent enough. And the idea of the brain booster, I think is cool. Is cool and does add a bit of drama to it. Does kind of remind me of Flowers for Algernon in a way, but whatever. If I had to give one boon to the episode, it's, believe it or not, Flash Thompson. Don't get me wrong, it is cool seeing him help out Spider-Man in the end, because it does showcase that there can be a noble soul in there. But as someone who's seen other versions of Flash Thompson who have actually been more helpful and less proportionate D-bags, this one's kind of a dick. Like, I don't hate him, but at the same time, the dude's a stone cold moron. Whether he's got the serum running through his veins or he's just himself, he's kind of a dick and kind of a moron. He doesn't like Peter because Peter's a brainiac. He worships Spider-Man because superhero worship, and even when he gets the serum, he's still relying on Dr. Zellner and having Dr. Zellner be the one that takes all the steps for him. He's just kind of a bystander in this thing. He's still a victim at the end of the day, and they don't make him be a complete jerk because you don't want to see him get killed, or you don't hate him like with last episode with Doug Reisman where you legitimately just thought this guy's a sleazebag and you just didn't care about him. This time the guy just feels like a lovable oaf. You don't there's a party you don't like him, but you'd like him enough that you don't want bad things to happen to him. So at the very least, there is that. It's just that there's not really much to him in that regard. He is at best a side character. He does provide he is still an integral part of the plot, as him getting involved with Dr. Zellner's experiment is what helps get Peter involved in wanting to stop him. But at the same time, he is ultimately the one that helps give Spidey the advantage to take down Zellner, as well as providing the formula. But as a character, he really just feels like he does feel very much like the victim, and by the end, it just feels like that nothing was accomplished since he learned nothing from this and still treats Peter like shit, even though Peter was the one that created the counter formula. And it's just, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. Again, don't hate the guy. They still do enough there to make you like this, to make you want to see him get out okay. But again, this version of Flash is just kind of a dumb. Is just a dumbass, and at the same, just a dumbass. And I feel like and I wish they could have done more with him. But then again, he's also only in this one episode. Like, you don't see him for any other episode in the series, and other series that have expanded on Flash's character did at least have him have significantly more screen time. One example being Spectacular Spider-Man. I do recommend looking into that. I do recommend looking into that show, and their version of Flash Thompson is definitely has more to him than just being the generic bully, as there were times he actually was an ally to Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but that's a different show. We're here to talk about this one. This version of Flash Thompson is just kind of a dumbass. You don't hate him, don't like him either. So you don't like him either. Lovable oaf, but also a doofus of the highest caliber, and really just there to help give a reason for Spider-Man to be involved. Still an integral part of the story. He is a boon. He is ultimately a boon. Enough to get you invested, and there's enough to want to keep the story going. But that he is still kind of a boon to the episode. At the end of the day, so yeah, what else did I think? Otherwise, though, still a good story. It does have a decent pace, especially when you bring in the serum and how it's slowly but surely killing you when you take it. I also like it's cool to see that. I like seeing Spider-Man ultimately stumble upon how all this connects to Dr. Zellner and putting the pieces together with Flash Thompson and the biker twins. I do like seeing it all. I do like seeing the tension rise, especially in the third act when Spidey is kind of put on a handicap when he's given the animal tranquilizers. So I think that's kind of cool, and I like seeing that. So I kind of like seeing where that goes. I like seeing him create the counter formula, and it is kind of amusing to see Flash be a smarty pants for a while. Which, that was just kind of, it's like so ridiculous but so funny at the same. I like that. So yeah, can't really give much else to say. Otherwise, pretty good episode, pretty cool. It was pretty good. Nothing great, but pretty good. Good pace, good character chemistry, more build, more stuff. Dr. Zellner was a decent villain. Flash was kind of a boon, not totally a hindrance, but at the end, he still felt like nothing was done. But it felt like his character did nothing, did nothing to progress. So yeah, otherwise, yeah, just a pretty good episode. I would recommend if you're interested. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and next week we're going to be introduced to Silver Sable. So I hope you're looking forward to that. But till then, I hope you have a good night and take care. Cheers.